Qualitative Research Method, Module 4, Observation. This topic is a continuation of what we discussed the last time, which is the interview. Our intended learning outcomes for these sessions describe observation processes, plan observation process, connect observation process with interview process. What is observation? It is a process of paying attention to a sensory stimulus and using senses to empirically capture an event, behavior, movement, reactions, and like. So when we're looking at things, we observe by seeing, by listening. What else? Even our sense of smell, even with the sense of touch, the feeling. So we make use of these senses to observe something, an event, behavior, movement, and the like. Now, why do we observe? By observing, it offers researchers the opportunity to gather first-hand live data from naturally occurring situations. Live data can be verbal, non-verbal, and physical. It provides a more valid information. It provides rich contextual information. So what do we observe in natural and controlled settings? We observe facts, number, qualifiers, time. We observe people, gender, culture, practices, socioeconomic conditions. We observe events, situation, climate, um, let's say, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic, quarantine. So that's an example of event. Behaviors, responses, attitudes, feelings, how people um, express their feelings, physical settings, the environment, and space. Artifacts like diary, video, audio, letters, the drawing. Routines such as habits, daily activity, programs. Okay. And now, how do we observe? Observation occurs in a continuum. So we have been talking about this the past sessions. There's always the subjectivity and objectivity whenever we observe. We cannot set aside our subjective way of thinking, our preferences, our principles, our conceptual framework, our philosophical framework will always be there. On the other hand, also, when we think objectively, given our plans, given the focus of our research. So we think of things objectively. But we always have to remember that subjectivity are always at place when we're looking, when observing things. But we only have to pay attention to their own thought processes. Because there's such some situation that subjects that such some situations can be um, very very influential that will stimulate our subjectivity. On the other hand, also um, when we become mindful of the of the goal of research, our plan for research, and we become more objective. So we need to pay attention to the how the subjectivity and objectivity play in our research. Okay, the kinds of observation, the different kinds of observation. So very often we think about, so we just we simply have to observe. We're going to observe during our research is one of the methods that we're going to use. But we have to remember that there are different ways of observing. It's like doing an interview. There are different ways of interviewing. So let us pay attention to the three focal um, fundamental ways of doing observation. We have the structured. When you talk about structured observation, you already have the hypothesis decided. So you already have decided on hypothesis, and before you even meet the people that you're going to observe, you already have in mind what you wanted to prove, and the you will only be using the observation to prove or disprove the assumptions. Okay. The semi-structured one is you already have half-baked information and you want to clarify more. So it means you already have some kind of hypothesis, but you're not really sure about this. So you want to make use of the observation to um, um, to clarify things, to put things in order, or to so sometimes we call this a kind of pilot study also. If you want to find things more, then eventually we'll be able to plan better. And the next one is the unstructured, it's a complete unstructured. You don't have a hypothesis, you don't know what's going to happen. So just for example, you just jump in there in a situation and let the situation dictate on what you want to discover. Or you want let the stimulus in that specific event or the stimulus of the person you would like to observe bring out what you needed to observe. So you're not clear about what you're looking for. So you make use of an structured observation. When I go back to the kind of research that I've made, going back to the Pintakasi community process that I made as a topic of my research, I actually made use of these three. I have the structured one, I have the semi-structured, and I have the unstructured. So when you're doing research, it really depends on how you plan things. You can start with the structured one, then, or you can start with the semi-structured, or you can come up with the unstructured one. Just for example, if you want to do some kind of research on children, on children's responses to a specific, for example, intervention, or some behaviors inside the classroom. So you have choices. You wanted a structured observation, you want a semi-structured observation, or you want an unstructured observation. Yes, for example, so you wanted to see the responses of children on a specific, let's say, therapeutic intervention. So what are you going to use? Structured, semi-structured, or unstructured? Okay. So again, going back, connecting these observations to the methodology that we discussed in module 3. So, for example, you're using phenomenology, or you're using ethnography, uh, ethnographic study, or you're making use of case study, or you're doing a grounded theory research. What else? Action research. So what are you going to use? Are you going to use structured observation? Are you going to use semi-structured observation? Or are you going to use unstructured observation? All right. Just for example, let's say you're doing some kind of case study or even phenomenological study. For example, and you are using, let's say, an FGD, or a focus group inquiry. If you're doing a focus group inquiry, what would be a more fitting kind of observation you're going to use? So you're going to make use of structured observation, semi-structured observation, and structured observation. For example, you would like to how candid the response of the people are in terms of group process. So what kind of observation are you going to use? And structured or structured? All right. Another very salient aspect of observation is you would often hear about this is the participatory observation. Okay, so this is one of very popular methods being used in terms of observation. But fundamentally, participatory observation is about you being a participant, you being engaging in a specific event. Just for example, in this let's say a rally, what's called this, a protest. So you would like to understand to look into the behavior of people joining the protests. So what kind of participatory observation are you going to use? So they're mainly just for structures here. Just for example, um, you are intimately known to the group and your observation is unconcealed. Just for example, ano ba yung mga popular na group dito sa Pilipinas? Sabihin natin Gabriela. So you are a member of Gabriela, and at the same time you're a psychologist, so you would like to understand better what is the behavior of the members when they are engaged in, for example, a protests. Okay, so you are known to the Gabriela, but at the same time you would like to create some observation research, and I call this and you would like and your intention for research is known to them. Okay, all right. Oh, what do you mean is not known to them, rather it's unconcealed. Okay, although you're very intimately known to them, so you don't want them to know that you're doing the research. On the other hand, also the other aspect is you are known, for example, to the Gabriela, but you you keep the tama ba? Conceal is you open it up. So unconceal is you don't open it. Okay? Conceal, tama ba yan? Conceal is you hide it, right? No, you conceal is you hide the intention of the research. Okay? You hide the intention of the observation. And the third one is you are unknown to the group. You are outside the Gabriela. Just for example, I'm just a psychologist wanting to know the behavior of people in, for example, in Gabriela. And at the same time, there are two ways. It's either you are known to them, but you inform them, or you don't inform them about the research. And the last one is this. For example, here um, for example, in this protest, you are just there. Nobody knows. You are unnoticed. Walang nakakakilala sa'yo. Hindi ka napapansin, but at the same time, you are observing. You're trying to do the study by observing them. Okay. So you have in doing participatory observation, you have these choices. Okay. But again, it depends really on your intention of or your plan, your purpose in doing a specific research. Um, another important process in doing observation is using the video observation or even audio observation. But I would like to emphasize the video observation because with video observation, it provides record of event, movement, behavior, expression, gesture, and the like. In all my researches, especially when I'm doing my community research and I'm doing some research on interventions, I usually do video observations. So I record the processes. So so that aside from doing the interview, I have an opportunity to look at the whole thing by watching the video that I have recorded. So you can look objectively on how observer approaches the research. You can um, you can watch the video many times to validate an observation. Just for example, may nakita kang observation, then eventually you have some question in your mind that you can always go back to the video and watch it and look at the details of video, and you will be able to validate to prove something that you believe in. So what you need to consider in using the video. So hindi ka lang maglalabas ng camera o maglalabas na camera, i-set up mo na doon. Hindi yun. So you really have to plan on how you're going to make use of the video observation. First is what kind of recording to use. Are you just going to make use some kind of CCTV, or just going to set up a what do you call this? A very professional a video camera with audio. Is it with audio or non-audio? Do you simply just want to observe the behavior of people, or you want to listen uh, to the conversation, on how people communicate? What is the focus of the video? The focus of the video is all about the facial expression? Is the focus of the video is about the expression of feelings? The what do you call this? Is the movement of the entire body? So it really depends on your intention. How many cameras? Only one, two, or three? So you'll be able to look at the dynamics. For example, when you're looking at when you are videoing some intervention for a couple. Okay, for example, you're giving couple counseling, relationship counseling. So what do you want to look into? So that you will have a kind of 360 degrees view. So how many cameras are going to make use? One, two, three. Okay. And who will operate the video? Is it you who will operate the video? Some other people will be. So your what do you call this? Your co-researcher will be operating the video. But you always have to consider the impact of that on, for example, on your subject, so that might get intimidated of the presence of other people. Okay, so that is still another consideration with your planning. So where to position the camera? So that is also very important. It's just very near the your subject, your participant. It's just very far from the participants. It really depends on your intention and how many events to record. So just for example, you're doing different sessions. Let's say you have 5 counseling sessions. How many recordings are you going to have? Again, it depends on your intention, the purpose of your research. Okay, this is very important, is to minimize the reactivity. There are times when people are videoed, so people would react on it, and part of their reaction is they change their behavior. Oh, it's like, oh, binivideo ako. So I might get intimidated. I might get some kind of insecurity, that they might feel bad that they're being videoed. So again, that is part of planning on how you're going to orient the participants. Okay, so that they will feel comfortable, they will feel at peace, that you're not going to breach the area of the ethics of doing research, the confidentiality, so on and so forth. That you will not be downloading this in YouTube, so on and so forth, to protect their what they call this, in respect to the participants. How to combine video with other data. So it is not only about when you're doing qualitative research, you are not only making use of the observation. There might be another other source of information, qualitative information, that you can make use of. So how are you going to connect that with other data? So what to analyze in the video? So what you're going to focus on? Is it about the communication? For example, on this video, what are you going to focus on? The non-verbal gestures, the verbal gestures, how they communicate, how they speak, how they express their emotions, the content, of the communication. It really depends. Okay, and how to analyze and interpret the video data. So how are you going to analyze and interpret the video data? So we're going to discuss about this specific topic on when we reach when we got into the analysis of data, how to analyze data. Okay. Um, uh, this picture, as you see the picture here, this is I did this 20 years ago. Okay, this is already on archives. All right, this is just to set an example of when you're doing an observation, specifically when you are using an intervention response. So you would like to observe how people respond to an intervention. So this is a research. This is an experimental research. Actually, it is a mixed methodology of quantitative and qualitative research. So I developed a counseling model. I developed a counseling model for family using spirituality. So I would like to test. So I developed a counseling process specifically for Filipino clientele. So, and on the other hand, also I made use of spirituality as the core of counseling Filipino families. So because this is something new that I would like to offer, so um, video is a very important tool here, just to to prove that the name of the counseling process is family gathering, but the Tagalog, let's just the Visayan language I use is the Banay Tigum. Banay Tigum use a family counseling model, a family counsel, Filipino family counseling model. So I have how many sessions? I had 5 sessions with a specific family and a video. So each session would have at least 1 hour. Okay, so I asked a psychologist also to video to help me video the counseling process, and I gave them orientation for the psychologist who's doing the video, but at the same time orienting the family on the role of the other psychologists in this session. Okay, the ethical process, so on and so forth. So doing a video, especially when you are doing an intervention response, you would like to see how, for example, this family responds to intervention. So video is very, very useful. And on the other hand, also what I would like to emphasize also, um, we can make use of observation to look into how participants respond, how a specific participant respond to a specific intervention. Okay. What to consider in planning an observation? So the first thing that we need to, if you're going to plan for an observation, okay, so I would like to emphasize we have to plan. We have to plan it out, how the observation is going to operate, right? So these are the things that we need to consider. So we need to consider the when, where, how, and what to observe, okay? Because when you may talk about observation, you can observe so many things. Just for example, if you're observing a classroom, okay, with children, there are just so many things that you can observe, but you only have to focus on one thing, okay? So are you going to observe while they're doing activities? Are you going to observe while they're what do you call it, socializing with other children? Are you going to observe how they communicate? Are you going to observe how they manipulate the materials, um, learning materials? Are you going to observe how they respond to the materials? Are you going to observe how what do you call this? How they follow instructions, so on and so forth. Okay. How much degree of structure is necessary in the observation? So, just for example, um, are you are you going to make use of the structured, the semi-structured, or completely you're not going to make use of any structure? So you would like to start empty in terms of observation, no preconceived things, Just like you want to just for example, with these children, you want to see the most salient, kung ano yung mas litaw na pwede mong obserbahan during this event. Okay. The duration of the observation period, which must be suitable for the behavior to occur and observe. So, for example, if you want to observe the children, so which is the best time to observe? Okay. Um, is it this is still very much related to the timing of the observation. Is it during the morning? Is it during a specific subject, right? Is it during in the afternoon? In which time children are most active and more and most engaging? All right. The context of the observation. Okay. So, for example, the context of the observation probably here is when people are doing some activity work, right? Or during the meeting, or for example, when I'm doing community work, I would like to observe really how the dynamics of community on their interaction with each other with the use of Pintakasi. So during the farming will be very meaningful and relevant for them. The nature of the observation, again, are you going to make use of the structure, semi-structured, or unstructured? Okay, so what is the opportunity for observation? Just for example, we just had the typhoon. It has impacted lots of people. So um, so this is an opportunity for you to observe how people behave. For example, in the evacuation center, okay, how people behave during the quarantine, so on and so forth. Okay. For example, bayanihan, you would like to look into how people really help each other. So you find an opportunity where there is really an activity where there is bayanihan. The merging of the merging of where are we? The nature of the observation, the merging of objective and subjective observation. So you have to be aware of the connection between the objective and subjective observation, the thin line that divides objectivity and subjectivity, the covert or overt participant observation. Are you going to, what do we mean by this, the covert and overt participant observation? Are you going to observe are you going to inform the participants about their search, or would you prefer not to inform them about the research? Okay. And the threats to the validity and reliability, I'm going to discuss that after this slide, and clarify your role as an observer. Okay. There are times when I was doing the research in Pintakasi when the demand for my role as of psychologist become more evident, that I don't only have to do my research but also have to act as a psychologist. So given the situation, what will be your role? Okay, because there are times that when you're doing qualitative research, you are not only a researcher. Situation might demand something else from you in terms of your connection with the people that you are observing. Okay, just for example, when you are dealing with these children while you are observing as a psychologist, and all of a sudden one of the students had kind of tantrum during this observation. So what are you going to do, psychology? Are you just going to observe, or are you just going to respond to the need of a specific child? Okay. And the next one is the validity and reliability in observation. This is very important. Okay. Um, in doing observation. The first one is to consider the validity and reliability. You have to pay attention to the selective attention of the observer, because sometimes you only want to pay attention to one thing, and you might disregard or overlook something else, right? because you might be so overwhelmed with what you're observing that you might forget the other area that you're observing. The second one is reactivity of participants. People may change their behavior when they know that they are being observed. I mentioned that already before. Now, kinakailangan mong tingnan kung paano nag-react ang mga participants habang inobserbahan mo sila. Kagaya ng mga bata, alam nila kapag inobserbahan mo sila, minsan mas nagiging behave sila kapag inobserbahan, may nag-observe sa kanila compared sa wala nag-observe. So, how are you going to deal with that? For example, with my observation, sometimes you needed to, for example, you go back to the classroom many times so that when they get used to you, then their natural behavior will come out. Okay. Attention deficit of observers. Sometimes, ang daming tumatakbo sa isip mo bilang observer kung saan pupunta ang attention mo na overlook mo o na tawag ito na nami-miss mo ang dapat mong observe. Selective data entry is very similar to the first one na ito lang gusto mong obserbahan, sineset aside mo yung isa dahil ayaw mo ma-discover nila na ito yung nangyayari. Selective memory is like pinipili mo lang, parang sinasala mo na sa memory mo ang gusto mong i-record as a data. Okay? So, miski alam mo na very, very important yung information na yon, pinipili mo, you create it parang option mo, nakalimutan siya. Okay? And of course, it affects the validity and reliability of your data. Expectancy effects na parang pag meron ka ng hypothesis, parang nagke-create ka na ng parang ito na yung mangyayari na wala na iba pang mangyayari kundi itong ine-expect ko. Okay? That the tendency you might set aside other information that the information that are also important. The number of observers. Okay. For example, pag napakaraming, for example, group, ito is a collaborative research, so maraming nag-observe. Minsan kapag napakaraming observer, nagkakaroon na ng napakaraming conflict, lalo na kapag hindi klaro yung direksyon ng, for example, it's very important, I mentioned it before, na kapag maraming kayong researcher, it's like 5 kayong researcher sa isang project, napakahalaga na planuhin mabuti at klaro yung goal ng grupo in terms of targeting the specific goal and purpose of the research. Okay. So okay lang naman na there are times na okay naman magkaiba-iba. Pero parang kung iba-ibang agenda, yung parang iba-iba yung agenda, yun ang mag-create ng conflict, and eventually that conflict will put the validity and reliability in question. Singular inference. So, hindi yung observation mo, hindi lang ito yung datos na magbabalidate sa inobserbahan mo. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na triangulation. So, hindi lang itong observation mo. For example, gumagamit ka ng video, hindi lang yon. There might be other information like diary or interview with other significant persons around that person na pinag-aaralan mo. Okay? Different interpretations. So, this is still very much related doon sa number of observations na iba-ibang interpretation. Even as an individual, kapag iba-ibang interpretation mo doon sa nakikita mo. So, ano yung magiging conclusion mo doon kapag iba-ibang observation mo? Okay? And most probably, the different interpretations might boil down to one important reason, and that is your ineffectivity to record the data in a very scientific and efficient way. Na hindi maayos yung pagkaka-record mo ng data. All right. So let us now reflect on this aspect. What is the relationship between interview and observation? But we also have to remember, just for example, we want to observe the behavior of a child. If we are interviewing, for example, a child, let us also remember that part of your interview is your observation. So you are not only, for example, interviewing a child, but you're also observing how a child responds to you during the interview. You're also observing the behavior of a child. You're also observing, for example, with this drawing, when you're asking, you're also observing how the choices of colors, okay, this the stroke, how a child, I mean, paano nagdo-drawing ang bata. So that will be still part of your observation. Okay, so what is the relationship between interview and observation? And for your assignment, answer Module 4 form. So that's all, people, and I hope you learned something from this very general description on how we can make use of observation as a method of research. Thank you.